Let's now take a critical perspective. Do entrepreneurial methods really work? Or rather, when does which entrepreneurial method work? A couple of years ago, I was approached by a student at our entrepreneurship program. She didn't like the prevailing focus on lean startup methodology, where students were supposed to constantly articulate and test their venture hypotheses and collect information from various stakeholders. Perhaps not so much according to us teachers, but according to conventional wisdom in the West Swedish entrepreneurial ecosystem. Like everywhere in the world, lean startup methodology is what everybody talks about. Here's what she said roughly. I didn't apply to this program to become a researcher who collects data about hypotheses. I came here to learn how to work as an entrepreneur and create value for customers. I could only agree, because for many years I've had this itch when it comes to simplified advice, such as lean startup methodology. Another quote that goes counter to obsessive market research comes from Professor Saraswati, the researcher behind effectuation, a quite different entrepreneurial method. She wrote that one of the entrepreneurs she interviewed said, "I don't believe in market research, I just go sell it." If we define lean startup methodology as a technique for doing research about the market, entrepreneurs actually hate such a method. They often prefer to just go out and sell something and learn from that. Maybe that's why my student was so critical. And she indeed went back and just went selling it. In fact, she was one of the most successful students that we've had in a while when it comes to bringing in paying customers to her venture, while still at the program. But what if it's not the method that is the problem, but how we apply it in practice? That can indeed be the case. It's not easy to articulate a testable hypothesis, to conduct an unbiased interview, to develop a minimum viable product that really does the job it should, or to measure the reception of it in a good way. But still, more and more people are raising their voices, claiming that there are a number of severe problems with lean startup methodology. One of them is the almost mythical entrepreneur and investor Mark Andreessen, who started Netscape many years ago. He has claimed that the method makes entrepreneurs neglect sales and marketing, and that it makes people give up too soon. But why is lean startup methodology getting so much critique now? Well, maybe because this particular method has kind of taken over the entire world's entrepreneurial ecosystem. So let's now summarize some of the most important limitations of lean startup methodology. First of all, lean startup doesn't fit all projects. For some, it's simply too expensive. For others, it's incompatible with their breakthrough idea or product. Another important limitation is the focus on building a minimum viable product. Releasing a very early product can lead to all sorts of problems. Unhappy customers who give you the impression that you are in the wrong business, when it is in fact only a matter of poor product quality. This is called false negatives and can lead people to abandon really good ideas. What if we instead try to build a minimum desirable product? A third limitation is related to creativity and artistic vision. Claims have been made that lean startup methodology could kill artistic vision. How do you quickly validate a grand vision? Maybe you just have to build it and then see who else loves it. There's more critique. A fourth critique is that lean startup methodology neglects a number of crucial business practices, such as working with strategy, sales and marketing. When fast-paced testing and hypothesizing takes over, people are less inclined to try to analyze megatrends in society and build offerings that should work based on a carefully thought-through strategy. Also, sales work could be neglected, which is odd, since the ultimate proof that people really want something is that they put real money on the table. A different approach could then perhaps be to sell first and build later. I worked with two students in earlier 2021 who studied this approach and compared it to the MVP approach. I think it's a rather promising approach, and the entrepreneurs they interviewed largely agreed. Here you can see a snippet from their thesis report, which is an intriguing read. I put it on Canvas in the recommended reading folder. A fifth limitation of lean startup is that it could provide an excuse for people to give up too early. What happens to learning, persevering, revising and going through the really challenging times often needed to succeed when there's this cool word everyone is talking about for calling it quits? And how many will stay unreasonable and try to adapt the world to their crazy world-changing vision, when current wisdom goes that you should every day be flexible and try to adapt your venture to the world? A final limitation is that there is actually not much evidence that proves that lean startup methodology works for entrepreneurs. Okay, we can agree that it is good to involve users or customers early on, and that lean startup can indeed help us win those pitch competitions that people love to attend. But other than that, people better be careful not to believe everything they are told. Unless, of course, you are a web startup with an incremental idea in a clearly defined market space, because that is a niche where lean startup seems to work really well. If we zoom out, there's another critical perspective we can take. Do entrepreneurs even use entrepreneurial methods? Not much, it seems. Only 3 methods were used by more than 3 out of 16 interviewed entrepreneurs in a recent study conducted by 2 former students of mine here at Chalmers School of Entrepreneurship. And the most used method, lean startup, was only used by 6 out of the 16 entrepreneurs, despite many more being aware of it. This study also found that entrepreneurs seem to use the logic, the thinking behind, more than the practical tools proposed by various methods. Mainly business planning and business model canvas then. Effectuation, for all its fame, was only used by 1 entrepreneur, and only the logic then, as a way of thinking. My way of interpreting this is that maybe entrepreneurial methods are best for novices. When you become a more seasoned entrepreneur or intrapreneur, this becomes a way of thinking, and you don't really follow a script or a procedure or a method. But to become an experienced entrepreneur or intrapreneur, I think these methods are absolutely crucial. They can save you years of time and also help you avoid many of the costly mistakes novices otherwise make.